All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a special edition of the Sports Department podcast. I am Steve Bologna, joined alongside fellow former college friend of us here at the podcast, Filip Demotrovski, our UFC and MMA specialist. And that's exactly what we are here to talk about today. We have UFC 257 this Saturday. Conor McGregor coming back to fight the Diamond Dustin Poirier. We're going to break down the card for you and what the winner of this fight could be meaning in the future of the UFC. But first, Filip, how you doing?
Same old. Same guy used to know.
Yeah, man. It's been a long time, years.
Yeah, it's 2 years since I've been, give or take, like less than 2 years I've been on any type of William Patterson related radio or podcast. So it's
man,
fun to be back.
It is. So as we know, we have a very important UFC card coming up this Saturday. Obviously, it's headlined by Conor McGregor against Dustin Poirier. We have Dan Hooker, number 6 ranked lightweight, versus Michael Chandler. I believe it's his first fight in the UFC, correct?
Yeah. He's coming from Bellator, so it's been a long-awaited debut. You know, they've been flirting around with who's going to fight, and ended up being Dan Hooker. That's the guy who actually I wanted him to fight too. So.
I know Chandler, when he signed in October, he was supposed to be the backup, quote unquote, for Khabib Gaethje. God forbid one of those two couldn't fight. Number 3 fight on the card, Jessica Eye versus Joanne Calderwood. It's a 6-7 women's flyweight bout. And really, other than that, it's like a skeleton card here.
Yeah,
very top heavy. And
it's a typical Conor card. I mean, other than 205 where they stacked it with 3 titles, because it was the first MSG card. Conor cards are generally fairly weak. I mean, they end up having good moments, like what was it, UFC 202 with the Diaz rematch. There was a bunch of cool, memorable moments, like that Cerrone knockout on Rick Story, that crazy combo, and Francis Rumble Johnson knocking out Glover Teixeira in 10 seconds. Things like that happen on these cards, but they're typically pretty weak building up. I mean, I'm actually surprised they had this solid of a co-main, because what was even the co-main of when he fought Cowboy last year? I think it was Holly Holm and Kel Pennington. I think that was the co-main. I don't know if there's a 3rd or 4th fight.
What UFC was that? Let me see. McGregor.
I'm so bad with numbers now. Like, after like 220, I started forgetting everything.
Yeah. But this co-main, this is actually interesting because we could potentially, obviously, the rumors around Khabib Nurmagomedov coming out of retirement, potentially to fight the winner of this. Not sure how true that is. We can't really get a straight answer at him. This could be potentially the winner of this fight could be facing the winner of the main card, especially with the recent kind of drop off of Tony Ferguson. So I want to start with this co-main, Dan Hooker versus Michael Chandler. Give me your thoughts on it.
Like I said, it was the fight that I wanted to happen, because I think Michael Chandler coming into the UFC, like, he's obviously, the word prospect is incorrect, just because he's already established. He was the Bellator champ. Ended up dropping that title, getting knocked out by a featherweight in Pitbull, but he was a champion, a solid one at that. One of the probably the best lightweight champion in Bellator history. Take that as you may, and Dan Hooker's a great opponent for him, just because I don't want to use the word gatekeeper, because he's definitely like in the contender spot, but he was one step away, probably maybe 1 or 2 fights away from the title when he fought Edson Barbosa and ended up losing. And I think he was for sure next in line for the title if he ended up beating Poirier, but he dropped that fight in a fight of the year contender last year. So I think Dan Hooker's super tough, great striker, great gas tank. I think he's a very good matchup for Michael Chandler, who poses great wrestling, some solid striking, and also a great gas tank himself.
Yeah, this is a big fight for Michael Chandler, getting put really on the next level of MMA with the UFC. And as we remember, the last big Bellator guy to switch over from to the UFC was Ben Askren. We all know how that worked out for him. So
yeah.
This is a big one for Michael Chandler. Dan Hooker, I mean, you talk about a guy with a good gas tank. He's gone to decision 3 of his last 4 fights, and he did lose to Dustin Poirier in his last one a couple months ago. So this should be kind of a dogfight to the end. Hopefully, a kind of a little like a bloodbath here.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch a Hooker fight, you could go into it expecting him to give his all. I mean, even when he got, you don't see him get finished, and when he did get finished by Edson Barbosa, it was just a brutal beatdown. I mean, toward the end of that fight, he was just eating body shots, and it ended up being a body shot that like he didn't want to go down, but you saw his body just gave out from underneath him, and in his body he had nothing left. It's not like he got knocked out. His chin is ridiculous. Actually, people forget he has a win. He knocked out Gilbert Burns, who's going to be fighting for the welterweight title. He went 5 rounds with Dustin Poirier in a fight of the year contender. That's one of those fights. If it was 3 rounds, Hooker probably would have won because I thought he won the first 2 rounds. So just because that was a 5-round fight, he ended up losing. Sometimes it's luck of the draw like that. So he's game. He's for sure game. He's one of the best lightweights on earth. And like I said, if Michael Chandler's been talking a very big game coming into this fight, he's kind of been his own biggest fan promoting his debut in the UFC. So he better put his money where his mouth is, because this is a great first fight for him. A very hard, tough first fight. And it's one that if he wins convincingly, and if he's the first person to actually like knock out Dan Hooker in the UFC or finish him like convincingly, that's going to make a huge statement for him, especially with that Khabib comeback over looming.
Yeah, and Hooker, someone kind of with sneaky knockout power. He's out of his last 6 fights, 2 of them have been 2 first-round knockouts. So definitely something to look out for. With Chandler, like I said, this could potentially, the winner of this fight could be fighting McGregor or Poirier. We don't really know what's coming out with Khabib. We're going to get to that later in the pod. But if you had to give a prediction for this one, what are you thinking?
Prediction for the end, how the fight's going to finish?
For how the fight's going to finish, yeah.
Yeah, I have Hooker. I think Hooker's going to win. I don't know how. I think he's going to win by decision. It's
I don't know how.
Yeah, he's just going to win. No, I think, I mean, yeah, I think I would say if it was up to me, I would pick him. Hooker's actually he's the favorite coming into this. Yeah, so the odds are with me, but it's pretty close. The odds. I think I have Hooker. I mean, I've seen both those guys fight. I've obviously watched more Hooker just because he's in the UFC. I mean, Chandler has some really iffy losses. I mean, he lost a war to Eddie Alvarez. He beat Eddie Alvarez as well. I mean, he got knocked out by a featherweight, like I said, and he has 2 losses to Will Brooks, who was a UFC reject. I mean, Will Brooks went to UFC and got cut after losing 3 or 4 straight fights. So, like I said, this is going to be the biggest test of his career. I mean, he's fought great guys. Like I said, he fought Eddie Alvarez, he fought Pitbull. He lost to both, but he also beat Eddie Alvarez. He had an impressive knockout over Benson Henderson recently. That was good, but again, Benson's kind of on the end of his career. So, like I said, this is going to be the biggest real test of Michael Chandler's career.
Yeah, the odds pretty much even money. Dan Hooker -125, as I see on the UFC website. So we're gonna have to see how this one plays out. Chandler hopefully wants to come in and get a big win in his first UFC fight. Now, obviously, we're gonna be talking about the main one here. Conor McGregor coming back. We're about a year anniversary from when he last
comeback. I mean, he fought literally last year.
He retired technically. Technically retired.
Yeah. That retirement. A McGregor retirement is so unbelievable at this point. Like he could actually retire for real, and I'm never gonna. Like something needs to happen for him to say he's retiring and me to actually believe it. But yeah, he retired.
He beat Cowboy Cerrone in very easy fashion about a year ago, as we all remember that one. After he was 2 years out of the octagon, and he's fighting a guy that he's beaten before. I believe it was 2014 when they last fought. Dustin Diamond Poirier, his last fight. Did he fight Dan Hooker last, or did he lose to Khabib last?
It was Dan Hooker. He fought after.
So he beat Dan Hooker. Did ultimately lose to Khabib. But this is a super interesting fight, and I'm very excited for it. Conor predicting a first 60 seconds knockout. The press conference was this morning, and both guys, they were just kind of having some fun with each other. Apparently, Conor's donating a lot of money to Dustin's foundation, and Dustin's going to send him hot sauce in return because he's got his own hot sauce company. But I'm very excited to see this fight, and Conor looks good. I will say that he seems to finally have his mindset right. He seems the whole whiskey thing is out of his mind, and he's focused on fighting again, which you love to see. Is that going to come back into the octagon? How well, like he did against Cerrone? Who knows? You know, Dustin's a pretty good opponent, fought for the belt in one of his last 2 fights. So I do expect Conor to win this one pretty easily. Maybe not easily, but I do expect Conor to win this one.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't even like predict this because I have a knack for just predicting Conor fights terribly wrong. Other than this, I predicted him to beat Cerrone, but other than that, I predicted every Conor fight wrong since he fought Chad Mendes. Actually, I thought he was going to win that fight. He did. I got the first Aldo fight wrong. I thought Aldo was going to win. We knew who that ended up. I thought McGregor was going to win the first Diaz fight. That ended up flipping. I thought Diaz was going to win the rematch. That ended up flipping. I thought Eddie Alvarez was going to win. I got that wrong. I thought Khabib was going to lose. I got that wrong. So I have Conor winning this fight, but based on my history, actually I broke that streak with Cerrone, so maybe I'll keep it going. But based on my history, it seems like Dustin Poirier is going to dominate him based off my prediction. Because I'm the opposite of Mystic Mac. I don't predict these things. I get them all wrong.
Conor, pretty heavy favorite in this one. He's minus 310. Whoever wins this one, I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks around this one. You know, big punches being thrown left and right. Obviously, I don't think this one's going to the ground at all unless the fight kind of flows that way.
Poirier has the ability to take it to the ground. I mean,
he does.
Jiu-Jitsu's like really underrated. He's really good on his back. He could control for the fight, but based on his history, it doesn't seem like he has a reason to go to the ground. I mean, he did pull that guillotine that looked pretty tight on Khabib. That was like the last time we saw a real submission attempt from him. And that, I mean, he didn't even commit to it. He didn't pull guard. He was kind of doing standing. And so he has a submission game there, but he doesn't like really go to it too often. I mean, we all know he's great on the ground. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but his last few wins have been slugfest. I mean, he showed some great work on the feet in the third round against Khabib. But I mean, his Dan Hooker fight, war on the feet, all 5 rounds, just a war. His fight with Max Holloway, 5-round war, all on the feet. They didn't go to the ground. His fight with Eddie Alvarez, the rematch, another war for 2 rounds before he finished them. His fight against Justin Gaethje, a 4-round war. So he's just, and he's littered with performance bonuses. Everything he's doing is getting fight of the night. He's just straight bonuses in like all his last, 5 of his last 7 fights. He's gotten a fight of the night bonus. So I think he's committed to staying on the ground. His boxing gotten sharp. I mean, we saw what his fight against Max Holloway, and we know how good of a boxer Max Holloway is based on last week.
Yeah,
that was one of the best boxers in the UFC. Yeah, you just put a beat down on Calvin Kattar. Look what Poirier did with Max Holloway. He boxed him for 5 rounds, and he won 3 of those rounds. Albeit the 5th round, he won grappling a little bit in the clinch, but the first 2 rounds, he's putting a beat down on Max. So he has the ability to do it, but you know Conor's power when it's in lock is that left hand just unloads. So we saw the fight once before. We saw Poirier and McGregor fight at a different weight class at 145, but we saw them fight before, and a grazing punch that hit him in the temple, Poirier was out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Poirier wants to stand on the feet with this one. Like you said, the Conor left hand, if it connects in the right place, you're going to be out cold. Now, the winner of this fight, Dana White had this huge announcement last week on the press conference about Khabib. I believe it was just that if Khabib sees something like insane in this fight, he'll consider fighting the winner. Now, do you see? Okay, whoever wins, say they do it in knockout fashion. By the way, it'll be really weird to see Conor just knocked out cold because we've never seen it before.
Yeah, we've only seen him get finished twice and it was by submission both times.
Yeah,
I mean, the only time we've ever seen him like rocked in the feet was that Diaz fight where Diaz hit him with the straight and then he shot for that takedown, which ended up costing him the fight. But he's got
a Khabib fight too in the second round.
That was like a flash knockdown. Like he wasn't like wobbly or anything. Like Nate had him wobbling. So the Khabib one, he did drop him with that overhand. That's true.
But are you buying into these Khabib rumors that, obviously his dad passed away from COVID and he said he doesn't want to fight without him. Do you believe that, or do you see him just done with the UFC? Because I know he wants GSP, that fight for legacy. Who knows if that's ever going to happen? It's been a rumor for years. But what do you think?
I mean, I think we should just weigh out all of his options. First, let's get the GSP one out of the way. I don't think that's going to happen. I know Dana White would love for that to happen because it'd be a massive money fight, and it's a win-win. Like whether GSP or Khabib wins, it's going to be like a GOAT argument for either of them. But I don't realistically don't see GSP coming out of retirement now. I mean, he's cracking 40 and he hasn't, he took 4 years off until he fought Bisping, and then it's been 4 years now. And, he's expected probably, if this fight would have happened this year, it'd be like in the fall, which would be the 4-year anniversary of his fight against Bisping. I really don't see it happening. So I want to get that one out of the way. Another one I want to get out of the way, because Khabib said, or according to Dana White, Khabib said in their meeting that he's going to watch the co-main and the main to see if he's impressed by what happens in either of them. And he still has Charles Oliveira weighing in the back of his mind, who, he's on a 8-fight win streak right now, 7 of those finishes, and just dominated Tony Ferguson for 3 rounds. I think the Hooker fight is out of the question too. I don't think anything happens that would make him fight Hooker. I mean, that would make Hooker on a 1-fight win streak because he just lost to Dustin Poirier. So I think that's out of the question. Chandler, I still don't think, unless Chandler does something really, really inconceivably like dominating and super like, just something like crazy, unexpected and impressive. I don't think Chandler's going to get it unless that happens. Yeah. And then you have Poirier and McGregor in the main event. Dana White and the UFC 100% want Conor to win this fight.
Oh,
Conor
absolutely.
is the star. He's the star. And if Conor and Khabib do a rematch, this is going to, without question, I'd bet my life on it that it would end up being the highest selling pay-per-view in UFC history. Depending on their history and the star power of both, Khabib coming back, everything going on, I think it would be probably the biggest fight in UFC. Easily the biggest fight in UFC history. Also, just want a side note too, UFC is really missing out if this fight does not have fans, because they could sell that arena out with the biggest with the biggest buy-in gate ever easily. Because people will be paying out their wallets to see this fight. I think if Poirier wins too, unless something again like something super impressive and he dominates Conor and finishes Conor, something like that, I don't really see the rematch of that happening just because it was pretty recent. I mean, it was only a year and a half ago, and this would be 2 fights removed on Poirier's side and only 1 fight removed on Khabib's side. I mean, Khabib beat Poirier, then beat Gaethje, and he'd be fighting Poirier again. I mean, contender-wise, it would make sense, but I don't think this is a fight Khabib really wants to come back for. Maybe the Conor fight has that money implication. He's going to make so much money off the Conor fight, and I know he said he doesn't want to give Conor any more attention, but in his mind, he probably would like to give Conor another beatdown. He wouldn't mind that.
We're still waiting on him and Ferguson too. I know Ferguson's kind of slipped away recently, but
no, I think that fight is dead. It sucks to say because it was, they booked it 4 times or 5 times. Yeah. And it fell through all 5 somehow. And it's a fight we're never going to get. I mean, Tony just lost 2 fights in a row and got dominated for 8 straight rounds, literally lost all 8 rounds in those 2 combined fights. I don't see a reason why that, unless again he builds up some crazy win streak quickly. I don't see that happening. There's an Oliveira fight too. I think it's going to come down to Conor and Oliveira. I think if Conor wins, if he comes back, it's going to be to fight Conor, and I think if Conor loses, he's going to take on Oliveira. But the Oliveira fight is super risky for him. It's like the lowest win, highest risk reward, just because Oliveira is so good as a submission artist. He's the most submissions in UFC history. He's arguably the best submission artist in UFC history. And Khabib a grappler, he's gonna have him on the ground. That's like the biggest chance for him to lose is something like that, something crazy to happen like that. And he doesn't really gain much out of beating Oliveira. I mean, his legacy doesn't get any much better. No one's gonna be like, oh, that him beating Charles Oliveira solidifies his legacy. No, I don't think anyone has that mindset. No. And it's not gonna be a huge star power fight. It's not. Khabib doesn't really care about that, but it's not going to draw on too many pay-per-view buys. It's not going to make him that as much money as a Conor or Poirier rematch would. So I think he wants to go that route. But I think the UFC is very, very much so banking on Conor winning this fight so they could book the rematch.
And I think that's pretty fair to say. I mean, one thing we know about Conor is he's very confident, and he seems into this fight. he is very confident. He seems relaxed. He doesn't have his mind out of fighting. He seems focused in on this one, which as someone who likes Conor, you love to see, because the first time he fought Khabib, that he was just a mess.
Yeah, I mean, we have Conor's weird because we have like different versions of him. Like we had the reason why so many people like Conor McGregor as a fighter and why he became the most popular star the sport's ever seen is because of that first buildup he had. That hungry McGregor was like unrivaled. That guy would go in there, talk shit, and then knock you out in the first round, predict that, and then go on and continue to do that to every guy he faced. I mean, he did that to everyone. He never knocked out. He didn't knock out Max, but aside from him, he beat everybody. Every fight he was predicting it. He was cocky. His fights were entertaining, and he would win at the end of it. Yeah. That McGregor kind of slipped out of range with the Khabib fight. It was more of the showmanship and building it up, and not as much of the actual fight. I mean, I know he says now that he wasn't motivated. It seemed like he wasn't very much motivated going into it. I mean, he had that whole Mayweather thing going on. The thing that worries me now too is that they're already booking a fight with him against Pacquiao, the boxing stuff.
I saw that.
I think he needs to push that stuff out of the way until this is over. Focus on what's in front of you. Poirier is no joke. But yeah, I think we got to after that whole Khabib thing, the media, or not the media, but his fandom was still supporting him. He kind of lost some fans with that, especially when he took the loss and
he beat the old guy up in the bar.
I was going to get to that. That's where he started really losing people. Is the stuff outside MMA where that was like something that like really lost him with a lot of people. He went from hero to villain real quick overnight. Even his loyal fans, it was indefensible. No one could defend the actions he did. No. That was awful. And there's also the sexual assault cases going on. That's losing him fans for sure, and it has to be kept in mind.
But with those, it's like every single one he gets found like not guilty, and then just more keep popping up. So it's
a
weird.
Subject I don't want to talk about just because I don't know the information. I don't have a dog in either fight. I shouldn't even say it that way, but I don't know anything about it. So
yeah.
I don't. Let the courts settle that. But again, it's just something. It's something that's not going to.
It's controversy. It's controversy.
It's a controversy. It's going to build notoriety. No pun intended. But and then once he came back to the Cowboy fight, we saw a new Conor that I felt was super disingenuous. It seemed fake from the start. I don't know. I guess people bought into it. It might be real, but that like super nice and respectful Conor, I don't know that guy. No, I know Conor's a respectful guy. Don't get me wrong. But he's respectable after the fights. Before the fights, he's not your friend. He wants to knock you out. He's going to say all these things about you, get in your head, and then get in the fight and win. That's the Conor I know, and all these millions of UFC fans built up and began to become a fan of. The stuff against Cowboy, him just a compliment battle in their press conference. That's not the Conor that I think is going to win more fans over. The performance won fans. It's going to win fans over again. Knocking him out in 40 seconds, not getting touched once.
Yeah,
that's going to win you fans. That fake nice stuff, I don't think is going to win him fans. He's kind of doing that with Poirier right now. It's not as forced. It's kind of a little toned down. But I think if he and Khabib get back in a press conference again, I think he kind of sheds all of that. I guess the only thing like really holding him back is the death of Abdul Manap, Khabib's father. That's obviously going to be a subject he's not going to touch upon. He's going to stay out of that. But other than that, I think he's going to go back to shit talking Conor. And I think that press conference and all the build up to that fight, if it ever happens, would be legendary to build up to, like I said, what I think is going to be the biggest UFC fight ever.
It's just funny that every time Conor fights, it's always this is the biggest fight in UFC history, and then it just keeps going.
I guess it was up until the Khabib fight. No one thought the Cerrone fight was going to end up being the biggest fight ever.
No, but like Jose Aldo, that was probably the biggest fight, and then you probably make the argument with Alvarez just because it was the 2-division championship.
Yeah, well, the biggest fight, the first Diaz fight was the second biggest card in terms of pay-per-view buys ever at the time, and then the second one ended up breaking the record. And then the Alvarez fight hit over 1 million. It was at like 1.3, and the Diaz rematch was 1.6. So it didn't break the record. So, and then the Khabib fight ended up shattering the record with 2.9 million buys. Yeah. So all his fights, it's gonna sell. This card's gonna sell over 1 million easy, as every Conor card does. I mean, the return against Cerrone, a very underwhelming opponent, a very underwhelming undercard, all that stuff. It still broke 1 million. So this, a much more game opponent, a much better co-main, still a weak card overall, but it's gonna he's gonna sleep through it and sell 1 million pay-per-views easy.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. You're going to have to see what Khabib wants to do. I'm surprised this isn't for an interim belt, maybe. This is
Well, it
a
doesn't
2
make any
versus
sense.
4.
Habib won just a few months ago.
Yeah, but like he retired. I mean, he says he retired, so you would assume that if this was legit, they would say, okay, we have to give the belt to someone. So that kind of tells me that he's gonna come back ultimately to fight someone. It's just who is that someone gonna be?
Well, I think the interim belts are kind of like we had a phase in the UFC where they got like really out of hand and like they kind of started toning down. I mean, look at that division already. In the past the past 4 years, we've had Tony interim champ. We've had Dustin Poirier interim champ already when he beat Max. And we had Justin Gaethje interim champ when he fought Tony. We've had 3 different interim champs in the last 4 years, and 1 unified champ. And we had 2 unified champs in the last 3 or 4 years. There really doesn't need to be. If Khabib's saying he might come back, that's one thing. Then even if Khabib did retire and they're gonna vacate the title, I know they would make this fight the undisputed title fight, but I don't really see a point to it. I mean, I do see a point to it money wise, and it's still gonna sell regardless. But neither of them make too much of a strong case. I mean, Conor has 1 fight, 1 win like the last 4 years. Poirier is on a 1 fight win streak. None of those guys scream title contender just yet. I mean, this win would definitely project them into that stratosphere, but for a title is kind of meaningless in this situation. No one's going to buy that these guys are the champion with Khabib still like floating around there. It's just not convincing anyone.
I'm with you there. We're going to love to see how this plays out. Saturday night, 10 o'clock is when the main card's going to kick off. I'm excited. I'm excited to see Conor back in the octagon. Yeah. UFC editing team always gets an A+ for me, and their hype up trailers. They're always fantastic. But Filip, thank you for joining today. Next time any big MMA or boxing news comes on, we're going to try and start and get more UFC, MMA, and boxing pods.
Yeah, we got some stacked cards coming up this year too. So
exactly. One for me that I'm looking forward to, Israel Adesanya. Big that's going to be awesome. And Jan Blachowicz. But thank you all so much for listening. Again, thank you, Filip, for joining me today. Make sure you follow us on all our socials at Sports Dept Pod. That's Sports DEPT Pod. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Have a great night, great weekend. We're gonna have some good podcasts coming out very soon. We have a NFC Championships podcast coming out, as long with a wrestling podcast also releasing, I believe, sometime this weekend. So thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.